welcome to my channel. My name is Danielle. I'm a writer, a reader, I'm a student, and today we are going to be talking about the reader part. So I read a lot of books during the summer. I read a lot more books than I usually do during the school year. And I want to share some of the fantastic books that I read with you. I will let you know that it was a pretty mediocre reading session. Not a lot of 5 stars, but I did save the best for last, fortunately. So there's that. Actually, during the summer, it was my first time having a full-time internship, and that was when I realized how much time you have when you work a full-time job as opposed to going to school full-time and working part-time. Oh my god, I had so much free time. I had free time in the evenings. I could do my work at work and then go home and not do work. Working a 40-hour work week is where it is at compared to school. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that made me realize, wondering if I actually really want to go to grad school or not, because working full-time was a hell of a lot easier than going to school, but that's neither here nor there. All the books I read were ebooks, actually, or some version of that, whether they were ebooks or audiobooks. So I'm gonna scoot to the side and have the ebook version of the title right here. Fantastic. Lovely. The first book I read was Claimed by the Orc Prince by Lionel Hart. I don't know why. I do know why I picked up this book. It's because I was planning to film a podcast episode about monster romances, and I thought that reading a book about Claimed by the Orc Prince would have helped because he's technically a monster. Talk about monster romances and talking about how it is different from straight monster romances, from queer monster romances. But I did not like this book. And here's the thing. Here is the thing. Okay, about this book. It's about Prince Tegan, who is set up with an arranged marriage with Zorvut the Relentless. And they have an arranged marriage, and it's like, they have an arranged marriage and then they fall in love in the end. Pretty much. That's the gist of it. And I did not spoil anything for you. It's an Emery romance fic. I did not like this book because the world building felt lackluster. There wasn't a lot of characterization. The romance felt incredibly way too rushed to me. I was just not a fan of this book. Would not recommend this book. However, I am still curious to see how the book progresses. I guess that just speaks to my own curiosity. But I am curious to see what happens, because in the next books, it implies that there's going to be like political turmoil, and I'm curious to see how the author handles that. So maybe I'll read another one, morbid curiosity. But aside from that, I ended up rating it like 2 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was Delilah Green Does Not Care by Ashley Herring Blake. It is the first in the Bright Falls series. It follows Delilah Green, who has sworn that she will never return to the small town of Bright Falls. However, her sister actually ends up having a wedding, and she has to work as a photographer there. During the wedding, or during the events leading up to the wedding, she falls for one of the bridesmaids. And yeah. It was very sweet, and it was one of the first sapphic romances that was actually decent that I read in a long time. I still rated it 3 out of 5 stars because it was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible. It was just meh. It was right in the middle. It was a good read. Maybe I'll bump it up to like 3.5 stars, but I still rated it round down because I round down more often than not when it comes to my ratings. But I think the romance between them was really sweet, and I think that the one thing one really good thing this book has going for it is that it is a queer romance book. I also really liked the character development in this book, although it was subtle, as it is oftentimes in like rom-com types of books. I did enjoy it. I also really liked Delilah Green as a character. She was super fun to be around compared to her stuck-up Astrid sister. I think Astrid has a queer comeback in one of the later books, so I am curious to see how that turns out. But yes. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Café con Lychee by Emery Lee. It is a YA enemies to lovers. It is about 2 sons from rival restaurants who end up having to team up together to take down the evil fusion restaurant that is taking over their town. And I liked it. It was very sweet. It was very queer. And I think that I would have loved this a lot when I was a lot younger. But I think that now that I'm older, I'm just no longer the target audience for it, and that kind of sucks, because I would have loved to read this book when I was younger, when I was a teenager, but alas. I am very thankful that this book exists for young queer teens to read now, and I think that they are very much going to love this book. I really love the characters Theo Mori and Gabriel Moreno. or Gabby Moreno, just when he went by. I really love Theo as a character. I related most to him. He is also the only other Asian character. I really love his humor. I really love Theo's sense of humor, and I really love the different point of views that are told in dual point of view from Theo and Gabby, but you could tell which character is talking without ever having to even like look at the title chapter, because you just feel so in tune with their voice and their personality that you know who's talking right away, which is something that I really appreciate as a writer and as a reader. A lot of it was cheesy, a lot of it was like corny, but I mean that's the point of like a YA book, especially with queer YA books. I feel like a lot of them are cheesy and corny because they're giving teenagers a chance to live through that cheesy, corny era that they didn't have. All of the media that they receive are from straight romances. Think Heartstopper. You know, I enjoyed this book. Would I read it again? No. Would I recommend it? Only if you're another queer teenager, but aside from that, I don't think that I would recommend this book. I think that there are other great queer teen YA books out there. I rated this 3 out of 5 stars because it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was just meh, and that's okay. Next book I read. Do I have it? I do not have it. I'll just put the title here. I can't be bothered to get the physical book somewhere on my bookshelf, but the next book I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. If you want to see my full reaction and full discussion, I will put the podcast episode where I discuss it here. I want to say where the iCard is gonna go, I think. If I'm wrong, fuck me. It's a story about a woman who falls into a romance, but it ends up being like abusive, and it follows her struggles as she tries to leave that abusive relationship. I do not like this book. I feel like everyone in the world knows about It Ends With Us. You already know my feelings on it. You already know how I feel about it. I am not a fan of it. And I think that it is stinky, the way that they market this book and the way that they handled the marketing and the movie and everything. And then I think that it is stinky. I think that there's a lot of drama and chisme going on that I'm not a fan of. But yes, would not recommend this book to anyone. I think that there are far better romance books if that's what you're looking out for. I think that there are far better books about domestic violence that you could be, if that is what you are interested in reading. Next book I read was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I read it for a YouTube video. I will put that up here. Maybe if the iCard is up here. If it's not, I look like a clown, and that's fine. But I read Ugly Love for a YouTube video. You've probably seen it. Thank you for the love and support on that video. I loved it very much. It was very fun to film, but was not a fan. Another 1 out of 5 star read for me. Okay, well, what is one positive thing I can say about this book? I liked when it ended. That was my favorite part. No, the ending was bad too. Ending was so bad, y'all. But anyway, not a fan of this book. Okay, so need to explain what it's about first. It's about Tate, who goes into a situationship with Miles Archer, but then Tate wants more, but Miles doesn't. And then throughout the book, we find out why Miles cannot open himself up to open up himself to a relationship with Tate, even though he really wants to. And that's where a lot of the conflict comes in. What does it sound boring? Yes. Is it boring? Yes. Not a fan. Let's just get past this book because I don't have much else to say about it that I did not say in the video already. Oh my god, it's so bad. It's so dubious consent, the problematicness, So throughout this time I fell down a bit of a productivity rabbit hole. I was watching a lot of productivity YouTubers, and I decided to read Ali Abdaal's book, which is Feel Good Productivity, How to Do More of What Matters to You by Ali Abdaal. If you haven't watched Ali Abdaal, he is a productivity YouTuber. You've probably seen him before floating around in different circles. And the whole point of this book, it's a productivity self-help book pretty much, but the whole point of this book was that the secret to success is not discipline, it is joy, and finding joy in the journey, which seemed very radical to me. Surprise, I know. I'm someone that is very disciplined and believes that discipline can get you in a lot of places. Not all of them. We do not live in a meritocracy. I am not that blue-pilled or whatever. And in addition to, this book did pull out resources from a lot of different books, and they're from other popular productivity books. But the thing is, if you watch Ali Abdaal, you probably are a productivity guru, and you probably read these other productivity books. So if you're reading the other productivity books and you're reading this book and it pulls from the productivity book that you've read already, you're kind of like, why did I spend my money on this book that's just kind of pulling out sources from books that I already know? It was really useful for me personally, but for a lot of people in the reviews, it turns out that it's not, just because the same situation that I said. They already have read a lot of the citations that Ali Abdaal is referencing in the books. So take it with a grain of salt, and also take any productivity book with a grain of salt. A lot of them are capitalism pilled. When I recommend this book, I would recommend it to people that are not very into productivity and just want a really quick beginner course into it. This book would be really great. If you are like a productivity guru who like watches all of Ali Abdaal's videos and watches a bunch of other productivity YouTubers and has read all their books and everything, his book's probably not going to be for you. I think that the problem with this book was that it failed to find its target audience, and the target audience was people that don't watch Ali Abdaal. But that's who the book's marketed to, because because of course you're going to market to your own audience. I don't know. It's a bit weird. It's a bit of an odd situation that Abdaal finds himself in. What can you do? I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was a good book. Oh my god. It was This Fatal Kiss by Alicia Jasinska. So spirited away in a whimsical fantasy world of around Eastern Europe. There is Rzalska, who is like this water nymph who is named Gisela, and she has to get a human's kiss in order to turn human again. And she sets her eyes on one of the village boys and gets one of her arch nemesis to play matchmaker for her. It was so good. Oh my god. This Fatal Kiss. Thank you, NetGalley, for giving me an arc in exchange for an honest review. I loved this book so much. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And I will get to why I didn't rate it 5 out of 5 later on in the review. But I really loved this book. It was so much fun, and the world building, the characterization, oh my goodness, the setting, though, actually I wouldn't call it prose lyrical per se, but I would say that it's very simple in the way that YA has like simple writing, but it doesn't make it bad in any way, and I really liked that it really seemed to complement the whimsical aspect. It still made it very whimsical, despite the kind of casual writing style that. And also, everyone in this book is bi, or pan, or poly, or of some sort. They're all queer. And that was really refreshing to see a book where there's just a bunch of queer people. We love to see it. Oh my goodness. This is a polyamorous romance book. So Gisela's love interests are Kazakh, who is the brooding arch nemesis witch who wants to exorcise her, and the local village boy Alexei. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Alexei, who is like a local village boy that harbors a dark secret of his own. I really enjoyed the book, but I have to say I did not give that much of a shit about Alexei as a character, even though when his dark secret was revealed, I was like, okay, cool. Can we get back to Kazakh and Gisela now? I care a lot more about Kazakh and Gisela, but I am curious. It did end off on a cliffhanger that heavily implies that we are going to get a book 2. So I am looking forward to that. And I will definitely be requesting an arc for book 2. I already followed the author on Instagram, I think. So I love Alicia Jasinska. I love her book. I have not read This Dark Tide, although reading this book has made me put that on my TBR. Kazakh as a character, actually, let's talk about Kazakh for a second. Kazakh as a character, look, I did a whole book review of this book again. I will put it in here if that is where the iCard is. If not, again, I look like a clown. But I put it in the iCard where I put that video. I did not edit, by the way. I gave it to an editor. Fun fact, by the way. But that's why the editing style is a bit different. But I ended up doing a book review on that book, and I went way more into depth about the characters and the setting and what I loved about it, what I did not like about it. So if you want to see more about that book, you can click on the iLink and watch that after you finish watching this video. Anyway, so next book I read was Zenith. Actually, let's talk about Kazakh. My goodness, I'm getting so ahead of myself. Let's talk about Kazakh. Kazakh was one of the main love interests, and I loved him. He was so funny, and I very much related to Kazakh, who was like a grumpy, stuck-up, arrogant witch who thinks that he's better than everyone else. I love it. I love him talking about the syncretism between paganism and the Catholic Church. That is presumably Catholic. We don't know if it's actually Catholic. It takes place in fantasy world, but it's heavily implied that it's a Catholic church. I love it. I also love talking about the differences. I love talking about the syncretism between paganism and the Catholic Church. I love talking about how it is interwoven with the setting around them and the world around them. I found this world to be incredibly rich. I would love to live where the characters live. It sounds so nice. And it was my first ever romantasy too. Like, I've read fantasy with romance in it, but nothing where the romance was like the main focus of the plot. Usually the romance is like a subplot. But I love this book. This is my first time reading romantasy, and I would definitely love to read more. Next book I read was Zenith by Sasha, Alsberg, and Lindsey Cummings. 1 star. Did not like this book for a lot of reasons. A lot of people did not like this book. If you don't know, it's an old wannabe space opera that was published in 2016. I want to say it got really popular because it was published by 2 very popular book talkers in the booktube community, and a lot of people were just like dunking on it because it sucked. And you know what? Yeah, it did suck. I wouldn't say it's like problematic or anything. It was just bad writing in general. I'm sure you can pick and choose in between like the problematic parts, but for me, it wasn't like overtly, grossly problematic per se. There are no POC in that book. Like, it's a space opera, but there are no POC in that book, except there are 2 POC, and that's a cringy love interest and a canonical evil guy that works in a super evil torture prison. Everyone is straight too. Everyone, even the robots are straight. I try not to think about that too much. Yeah, not a fan of this book. It's a story about... what are the characters' names? I read this book twice, and I still don't know their names. Andy. It was a story about Andy, who is a super evil assassin, and she has to save a prince that has been kidnapped and is rotting in this super evil torture prison. However, that part of the book takes place in the first half, and in the second half it's like all just fluff. Was not a fan of the pacing, of the plotting, of the characterization, and oh god, it's so bad. I'll put an link somewhere here or somewhere about where you can find the whole video discussion that I did with Evan on our podcast. Would not recommend this book to anyone, actually. Usually I'm like, you know what, even though it's not for me, someone else will love it. No, not a fan. There are way better sci-fi space operas that you can read that aren't Zenith by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsey Cummings, and I highly recommend those. Oh well. Next book, Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I rated this... What did I rate this? 2 stars. Look, it's not for me. It's really not for me. So there's that going against it. It's a vanilla romance between a straight couple that attends college, and they're like enemies to lovers. One of them is a figure skater, the other one is a hockey bro, and then they end up falling in love after they had to share courts with one another. And look, it's popular on TikTok, and I understand why people love it. Just because I do not like it doesn't mean that I would not recommend it to someone else, because I can definitely see the appeal, because it's a vanilla romance book, and as vanilla as it gets, they do have sex in an Uber with people in the Uber, which is not very vanilla of them and not very fun. But that is a very, when I say vanilla, I mean like it's not like Den of Vipers level. It's not like Haunting Adeline type of romance, and I can see how it gets its appeal to a lot of different people. But I did not like it because there was no conflict. Even in the romance part, there was no like will they, won't they, and I like seeing that. But I can definitely see the joy in just reading a book there that is just all about fluff, and that's what you get on the scene. I mean, that's what a lot of people read fanfic for. They just want to read fluff, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It was just not my thing. Yeah. Will not be reading the sequel, but I did read this book because it was super popular, and I did plan to make a YouTube video on it, which is coming like sometime in October, I think. So y'all gotta wait a little bit for it. Maybe it'll come out in November. I don't know when this video is coming out. It'll come out eventually. Next book I read was Palestinian book, which I have been wanting to read more Palestinian books. I have not been able to because a lot of the books that I've been reading have been for YouTube or for school. Finally got to read something that was on my own TBR, which was You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafet. So You Exist Too Much follows the story about a Palestinian girl who comes out to her mother And her mother's response to that is, you exist too much. And it follows, and it's told in vignettes of all the times that the main character has existed too much. I saw a lot of hype for this book because it's like sapphic and it's Palestinian, and a lot of people were like, let's lift Palestinian authors, etc., etc. So I decided to read this book as a little foray into that. And I was not a fan of this book, unfortunately. Nothing to do with my stance on Palestine. I was just not a fan of this book. And the reason why I'm not a fan of this book is that it felt a lot of like waffling around. And I know that it's told in vignettes, but the reason why is that I say that is because at the end of the book, there's a really strong end, and there are a lot of lines that like, ooh, make you like your heart twinge and like wrench. But if only that writing was continued throughout the entire book and not just the end, it would have been a fantastic book. And that kind of sucks that the writing wasn't consistent throughout the whole book. Like, it wasn't consistently good throughout the whole book, which sucks. It's a story about having to reckon with the dual identity of being American and Palestinian. It just missed the mark, unfortunately, and for me. And that sucks, because there was a lot of potential, and I could definitely see how this writer is a talented writer, if only the ending was just as good as the rest of the book. I gave that book 2 out of 5 stars. I was going to give it 1 out of 5, but the ending bumped it up a bit. Another book I read for the hockey romance video that I am planning is Collide by Bal Khabra. So it follows Summer Preston, who is an honor student, a nerd, and it follows also Aiden Crawford, who is just like another hockey bro, and it's very formulaic, and it follows the same formula as Icebreaker, where they're enemies and they hate each other, but they are forced to work together on this project that they have to work on, and then they end up falling in love. And formula aside, I'm not gonna get on it because like, oh my god, you follow a formula, because that's the whole point of the book. It's a romance book. It's supposed to follow a formula. Like, you're not reading a romance book for like new and exciting new ways to look at plot and structure. It's like not like a literary fiction book. It's a romance genre fiction book. You're getting what you pay for. I will put the timestamp somewhere here of when to skip to avoid spoilers for Collide. Okay, starting now. Spoilers. I did not like that they treated Danny as like a villain, because Danny sleeps with one of the professors, and he's treated as like the villain for it, when really he's a victim. And I wish that there was more time spent having to have him reckon with the fact that he was. They don't even have to have him be like, oh, I am a victim and I feel so bad for myself. They don't even have to do that. But I wish that Summer and Aiden were like, oh my god, really? You slept with a professor? Wasn't she taking advantage of you? I wish there was more sympathy given towards him, and I don't like that there wasn't. I find it problematic and kind of yucky, and kind of like we say that like male sexual assault is like less than female sexual assault, or like less problematic or less traumatic, especially in this case, because if it was a woman, I feel like it would have been treated a lot differently than it was a man. Anyway, that's my take on it. Skip to now. In other words, there was something that I found problematic in the book that made me very concerned. I wish that it was treated differently, but alas. That was me reading Collide, and I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. Not my cup of tea, but it's okay. So it's someone else's cup of tea, and that's fine. The cream of the crop. The book that we have been waiting for, the 1 5-star of the year so far. It is Nightstrider by Sophia Slade. I read this book as an ARC. Thank you, NetGalley, for giving me a free ARC in exchange for an honest review. And I'm going to do a full book review on this book next week, I think. Knock on wood that gets done in time. It's a fantasy story about a nightmare going on a quest for revenge against her cruel creator. So good. My goodness. The lyrical prose in a fantasy book. It was so good, y'all. It was so good. It was so good. If you guys want to pre-order the book, I'll put the pre-order link down below. We actually ended up interviewing Sophia, which is coming out this Wednesday, actually. So I will, by the time that comes out, I'll put the link somewhere here, and I will put the link down below to see the interview that we did with Sophia. I've actually been mutual with Sophia since 2019. We have been floating around the same social circles for that long. I will talk more about it in the next video. I had no complaints about this book. I really love the world building. I love the setting. I love the characters as well, the characterization. I love the plot. I love the pacing. I love everything about this book. I thought it was really good. And yes, I would very much recommend this book to people who are looking for a really good dark fantasy that has lyrical prose in it. That is my bread and butter. That is my bread and butter, folks. So yes, I would very much recommend this book to folks that like those types of books. And the cover looks amazing, by the way. Congrats to Sophia for such an amazing book. For her traditional debut published novel, it's a fantastic book. I very much recommend it. Actually, I rated it more of a 4.5 out of 5 because I wish there was just more meat to the story. I think that it would have benefited from having more word count to the story, but I don't think that we can really blame the author for that. I think we can blame the publishing house because they probably put a word limit for her. But they gave her a pretty generous word limit for a debut book, so I'm just saying. Anyway, I think that I just think that the story would have benefited from having more meat to it. It is what it is. So I rated 4 out of 5, but I rounded up to a 5-star read. So yeah, those are the books that I read during the summer of 2024, and thank you so much for the free arcs and everything that I got from them, and thank you for sticking around. You can tell that it wasn't really a lot of the books that I read was actually for my YouTube channel. Very few were like for my own reading pleasure. It is what it is. But I do hope to read more fun books now that school has started, because I have to prioritize my school reading. The few books I'm going to read are going to be fun books, or so I swear to God. Well, actually, speaking of fun books, let's just do a TBR right now. The only TBR book that I really want to read for the fall is this book, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And I know people were like, you want to read that for a fun book? And I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I've never read this book. I heard that it's a lot of trauma dumping, and I'm curious. And I heard it's queer, and I think it takes place during the AIDS crisis. I think that's what it's about. I think. What else? I do have other books that I want to read over the fall, like Babel by R.F. Kuang, Woman of Pleasure by Kyoko Murata. I want to reread I always want to read Tender as the Flesh come Halloween season. But yeah, those are some of the books that I want to read over the fall, and I am keeping it small because I do have to read a lot for school. I have to read a ton for school. If you don't know, I am an English major. That means I read a lot for school. So the few readings that I can get done for fun, I picked them strategically. But yeah, those are the books that I'm planning to read for fall, and those are all the books I read over the summer. And thank you so much for watching my video. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to see more videos from me, I post new videos every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please subscribe down below. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I will see you again next time. Okay. Bye!